So you have this kind of like you're getting beyond the rational mind, and I think that can be liberating and very positive to kind of go beyond needing to have those purposes. And then there's this thing that you've termed epistemological anarchism, of this kind of valuing of what's beyond knowledge. Maybe you could unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, epistemological anarchism, those exact words were from Paul Feyerabend, who was a philosopher of science who started publishing some of these books in the 1970s. And it very much towards the same, the way I look at it is in a paradoxical kind of way, you go from epistemological concepts, philosophy of science, but if you look at martial arts, that's exactly what Bruce Lee was arguing before Feyerabend even. And it's this idea that any methodology offers some promise, but also has some limitations. And so the ideal approach is to have a very open-ended methodology that's willing to borrow from different approaches in order to figure out what works in those approaches, use their strengths without being bound to their weaknesses. And this again applies to everything, because it's the same as if you look at something that people argue about a lot, political ideologies. It's very rare that you find a political ideology where there's 0.0% where there's nothing good whatsoever. Take even the most absolutely awful ideology. They usually have a couple of ideas that are not beyond terrible. Take something like, and then of course some people will seize those things and they think that then the whole ideology is good. And it's like, no, just because Mussolini made the trains arrive on time does not mean that all of fascism was a good idea. There are 3,000 problems with it, but I'm down with trains arriving on time. So let's take that concept, see how we can make that work without all the negative baggage that come with it, And so in that sense, that idea, the Bruce Lee approach, the epistemological anarchism approach, is to take what works, take the best from different systems, and see if you can do it from different ones and combine them in a way that works better ultimately. That's, again, it's just taking the best from multiple sources without being bound to its limitations, which is the exact opposite of what people do political, for example, where they get married to an ideology and then they feel they have to defend that ideology. Doesn't matter the outcome, doesn't matter whether that ideology is actually working or not in a particular context. It's our flag, it's our identity, it's who we are, so it should be, I'm going to defend it 100% of the times. And it's like, why? Why would you want to use it when it doesn't work? Why do you want to make it a point of pride when clearly has hit its limitations and there are things where it's not working so well? Why don't you just borrow from a different idea? And so in that sense, there's a dogmatism that goes between married to an ideology or a methodology, or in Bruce Lee's case, a martial arts style. Or the idea there is instead to take the best from all of them. And the best may change over time, and you constantly adapt again. It's like in that, if you look at something between the arguments between hardcore free market capitalist and 100% like straight up communism, and then pretty much nothing. There are hardly any systems that work like that. Most everything is a mix between more government intervention and more free market initiative. And so the question there, rather than being these two polar opposite things that are at war with each other, is like, what's the good balance? What's one that works? What is a state that guarantees some social programs that covers the ass of people who are struggling in a big way, while at the same time not squashing individual initiative? Where is that line? Where should we draw it? And that again becomes an open discussion. It's like, as long as it works, let's figure it out. I don't care if it's 60-40, 70-30, 30-70 the other way, as long as it's delivering both ends of the deal, where there are freedoms, but there are also protections. Great. I don't care where you draw the line, just give me that result. Yeah. But again, that's not how people work, because most people will invest, they'll build an identity around a particular approach. whether it is their religion or whether it is a political ideology or whether it is, I mean, it becomes stupid. Like even in martial arts, you would see in the pre-Bruce Lee days, we are judo guys, karate is terrible. No, karate is wonderful. You guys don't know. It's like, I think people are so desperate for a sense of identity that they will latch on to anything that gives them a slogan, a flag, colors, a uniform, because it fulfills a psychological need. But unfortunately, that comes at a horrendously heavy price.
Yeah, I think definitely you're right that stories can often function as kind of security blankets that just make us feel better. And usually because they work in some instances, but then we're unwilling to take the risk of having the epistemological anarchism and seeing the value in other stories and changing our story and seeing that as a value rather than a flaw to like change your story. And I think it also links to the idea of the limits of the rational mind, in that if you think the rational mind is everything, you kind of take your stories to be reality. You see through them and you think the reality is your story. But then once you see that the rational mind's a tool and that stories are always fallible, they're always flawed in some way, then having a kind of an ecology of ideas, having a bunch of different narratives, a bunch of different perspectives, and trying to bring them all together, that just seems like an incredibly wise thing to do.
Yeah, otherwise it's really just like thinking that, you go through life thinking, I have a hammer helped me nail something in the wall. This means hammer is best in everything. I should solve every single one of life's problems with my hammer. And it's like, no, it's nice when you need to hammer something in a wall. You can probably use it for a few other things. But you need other stuff. It's not going to work in other contexts. And as silly as that sounds, that is exactly what a lot of people do once they become married to a particular idea.
Right. And so you mentioned, we were talking about epistemological anarchism, but then also kind of political anarchism was also associated with Taoism, right? A kind of emphasis on, as you described in your kind of analogy with your daughter, a kind of allowing maximum freedom, maximum self-governance, self-organization, and just kind of as little top-down, heavy-handed control as possible, which, am I right that was kind of associated with Confucianism around the same time?
For sure. Confucianism was all about these rigid rules and these do this, don't do that kind of thing. Taoism has, there is also different though, because Confucianism is really designed to reform all of society. Taoism is arguing that, is essentially addressing people that, for lack of a better term, is not that they are smart, but they have a certain sensitivity, that they have what it takes to be able to apply that balance on the fly. And so in that sense, Taoism can be fairly elitist, because their thing is like, you see in multiple Taoists seeing this idea of people who want to learn, and the Taoist master was like, nah, it's not for you. Go learn Confucianism. They'll give you simple rules. You'll probably avoid doing too much damage. It's better for you. You'll get hurt with Taoism. It's more than you can handle, which sounds horrendously elitist. At the same time, there's something to be said there for the fact that, Taoism is easy if you have incredible sensitivity, phenomenal self-knowledge, fair degree of understanding of stuff. It's like, if you have all these tools, then you can use this in a phenomenal way. If you don't, it's like saying somebody who doesn't know how to cook about, no, we won't give you a recipe. You'll just, here are the ingredients. You need to kind of figure out the right timing, and it's going to be horrible, right? So again, even that, there's a bit of a balance with the opposite of Taoism. Some rules are useful, but too many rules kill you. So it's like, okay, you do, and some people need a few more rules than others, but even that is on a continuum. You're going to use some of that because you need it, but too much squashes it. And maybe use some of it, even at stages in your life may be different. When you first learn how to cook, you need recipes. When you get good, you move beyond the recipes and you can kind of leave them behind because you have developed that instinctive knowledge to adapt things on the fly. So there's an element there where even like when people emphasize more the anarchist aspect of Taoism, yes and no, because yes, to some degree, for sure, but that's almost the goal. That's where you want to get. In some cases, some societies, some people can handle it. You know, they need more structure, more rules, or it's not going to work. You know, that it would work great if everybody was not terrible and selfish and so short-sighted kind of thing. If, you know, it would be ideal to have, I don't know, let's see a case where rules apply, like environmental regulations. Why do you need rules if you're smart? You're not going to poison the water you drink. You're not going to do terrible things. You know, you understand that you're part of an ecosystem where it benefits everybody. So what's the need for rules? Well, unfortunately, there are a bunch of people who, for short-sighted reasons, don't get that. And so in that case, you kind of need rules in order to make sure that certain things are not done by the people who don't get it. And again, it's a hard balance because rules are far from an ideal tool. You know, in an ideal world, you would want people to have it understood internally so that they don't need the rules. But the reality of life is that not everybody gets it right away or ever sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like the psychology of fear maybe is one of the variables that pushes people on this axis. So like that, you know, if you're terrified of messing up the meal, you might demand the recipe because you're like, if I follow the rules, you know, that's like things are more likely to go safely. And then even, you know, all the way to kind of political like fascism and kind of heavy-handed like, you know, if the culture has a lot of trauma, it might just be like, no, we need hard and fast rules to get everything under control. And so I feel like once one can kind of see the more wisdom in the lack of rules where there's not as much fear. I think that's something that's maybe one of the relevant kind of dials that we can turn.
And one of the hard things on that is that the lack of rules, it's so much easier to apply on an individual level than a societal level. Because at an individual level, if you develop those qualities and those awareness and those things, you can apply and you'll still not do damage. But when you try to apply the model on a societal rule where not everybody gets it to the same degree, it's like you're giving this race car to people who can drive to. It's like, there's a problem. A race car is great in the hands of this guy who's a phenomenal pilot. A race car is not great in the hands of a 5-year-old. So where do you draw the line again? And that's what makes it complicated. It would be so easy to say no rules ever and everything will work out fine just because, or, you know, top-heavy approach, it works every time. No, both of those don't work 99.9% of the time. So where exactly do you draw the line? And when you talk about a society that involves millions of people who are all very different by nature and by experience, that's a really hard call to make.